Okay, so let's talk about you sent me four drawings that you like. And what I wanted to ask is if you would describe those drawings and what they say and why you like them. So the first one is
Sure.
an American flag, which to me is a commentary on Trump foreign policy, also domestic foreign policy and other things and cruelty. But will you describe it and the choices that you made in doing it? And I would also like to know what's the public reaction to it.
So that one, if I remember correctly, was the flag where the stripes were the hunched over individuals that had been part of that were kind of famously taken photos of that were the people that were basically disappeared to Secot in El Salvador, whether or not they had any criminal record. And many of whom, have disappeared essentially, and who knows what has happened or will happen to them. And then the set of the stars were the KKK hoods, and
So white kind of looking like ghosts as well, right? They're just the
yeah, I mean, I definitely drew them as
triangles.
I believe KKK hoods, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. And so again, it was sort of appropriating something that's obviously a very patriotic symbol of the flag. And really just taking something that was happening at the time and for me showing what is truly like the American export, which is, brutality, violence, imperialism, the carceral system above all else.
Well, it's much more than that because that picture depicts torture
Sure,
and it depicts a level of inhumanity, and it also portrays anonymity. We don't have any individual names of any of those people. We don't know who they are. They're othered. There's all these things in that. And your choice is you put them in these very small stripes where they're again really crouched down. They don't have any room to move. And that kind of becomes, what we've associated always with the stripes of America. It's
sure.
different stripes. So your choices are are um are deliberate and get read on many levels. But I think certainly torture is not just, American Empire. It's more than that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly the fact that they were reduced to barely discernible, you
Figure.
could tell they're people, but there's no sort of distinction one to the other. That was certainly a deliberate choice in that, when you think back to well, how did this country become this superpower? Well, because we benefited from free labor for a couple centuries. So, and that's sort of like
Right.
baked into the whole
Right.
fabric of the country.
And you chose the KKK.
I try to I always try to like when it makes sense with the drawing include that because and I'm guilty of this too. I think it's very easy to analogize with Nazis and Hitler, which is true oftentimes, very very much so and deliberately so. But I think it's also very easy as an American to deflect to that, which, however imperceptibly or intentionally, takes a little bit of the onus off of us. I mean,
This art
Hitler got
history.
his.
Yeah, yeah. But also white supremacy, right? You could say that
Oh yeah,
entire immigration program I mean, we could prove it if we could document it properly, but certainly the entire program of Project 2025 and the Trump administration and the Christian nationalist movement that is behind this is one of erasure of brown and
absolutely.
black experience, identity, rights, and everything else, as well as actual people. And it's definitely an advancement of white supremacy, and that is historically true, and that is not. So that ties very much into the KKK. So I think you say it well, and certainly the deportation of people who are from Venezuela, El Salvador, to Chico is an absolute example of that kind of erasure.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, very much so.
To the cruelty. Okay. So the next one, I said was what was the public reaction to it? Did you particularly note one or not?
I don't know necessarily. Again, like I try not to look at comments too much. Sometimes it's, I
Right.
can't help myself or come across it, but I don't really know. I mean, I don't really know. I'm not sure what the reaction of that one was. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think at the time, I think it was probably fairly well received. Because in when that was drawn, those photos that had come out of those individuals like shackled to one another was pretty widely proliferated. So I think the iconography was clear. So I think it was probably positively received. I don't know.
And do your drawings get reprinted in other media, whether they're newspapers or other magazines or journals and what? And if so, do people have to ask you for permission for those, or just does it just get done and organically you follow it since you put it out on social media?
I
I mean,
don't think
I've
so.
reprinted things in mine, but I credit every journal, every person that I ever credit. You know what I mean?
I think anecdotally, there's been a few people who are like share my drawings in like in for example their Substacks and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But pretty, I don't really know. I don't think much in terms of other medium like print. No, like I don't really. No one. I don't think that really happens. I don't. I mean, I've I don't. I'm not a good self marketer at all. And like that's probably shown in sort of the lack of diversity in where my drawings show up. I'm not really,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about the second one. The second one is called Works of Art at the New Smithsonian. And
Yeah,
I took this as a, a commentary on censorship, among other things, but also the kind of, you know, um, the sort of core, almost fulminant narcissism that animates Trump to the point where he has to constantly put his name or things
sure.
about his family on everything, every object, every institution, in terms of claiming ownership, a kind of personalized colonialism that is really kind of remarkable, right?
Yeah.
It's very, a kind of an uber capitalistic one as well. So
Oh
I look
yeah.
at it as like both of those things, commentary on censorship and commentary on Trump's policy of branding, of political
Yeah.
branding himself on, as a brand, as a statement. So tell me about works of art and what does it look like and your choices in making it?
So that one I included to share with you because that for me was a real throwback to my other sort of main formative artist at the same time I was really into Burke Breathed was pre-Simpsons Matt Groening. So Life in Hell, Akbar and Jeff. Um, Very subversive, super simple, just simple lines, and so many jokes, oftentimes about really serious things. And so that I've it's not always my goal or my point or my interest, but I do find it interesting when you can find jokes or satire in a moment that seems so bereft of satire or satire seems impossible. And for this was very much that. It was, I this is I the sort of takeover of the Smithsonian, which was again echoed exactly what happened with Hitler, um, was so just nakedly awful, narcissistic, the whole thing. And to me, it was an example where that it was so rife for just making fun of
Looking
mercilessly.
fun at. Yeah.
Um, and there was a lot of different angles you can take. I mean, because you're talking about a
Right.
museum which holds the human
You kind
civilizations.
of made it be a museum of Trumpism.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. And you can kind of go in any direction. And that, I mean, those kinds of drawings are just on a personal level the most fun because you have an opportunity to be like, I guess, creative. And it's almost like a game, like those drawings for me, because I'll figure out, okay, I want to do like, you know, six things.
Hmm.
What are the six? It's like a puzzle, like a Sudoku or something. You kind of like, what are the six things I can figure out to like illustrate how profoundly depressing and silly and remarkably awful this venture is.
Yeah. Okay. Third one is a Statue of Liberty hanging herself, or possibly himself, herself with a long red tie that we read, of course, as Trump's signature long red tie. Um, but at the same time, I don't know when it came out, but it made me immediately think, of course, about Jeffrey Epstein because the
Oh, yeah.
question was whether or not he had hung himself with a tie. And it made me think about people at ICE who are being accused of having hung themselves. So I had a
Right.
bunch of references that I immediately thought about. And I also thought that the face didn't necessarily look so female. It could have easily been Jeffrey Epstein's face. So that's just like as a personal reader, like that's how I read it.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
what was that drawing for you, and why did you make it?
It was the morning after the election. And it was like I woke up and it was one of those drawings that it was just, and thankfully this happens not too rarely. But it was just like I kind of had, it was just the thought I had in my head almost immediately. Like,
Hung ourselves. So
yeah,
yeah,
and so, and exactly, I'm glad you actually used that phrasing because I think some people have said, oh, this is, look what's being done to, what's being done to liberty. But it's, I think part of, and which is true, but part of it is also look what we've done to ourselves, and so that's very much it. It was very much just like this visceral,
got it.
emotional response to something that had just happened.
Okay. The last one is I think it's George Washington. Certainly would be read as a George
Oh, yeah.
Washington and a number of the early U.S. colonists. One is I wanted to know, were there different people specifically represented? I didn't know that, but there might have been. And also, I was interested in that one where we know that you're referring to Trump. You don't say it's Trump, but we're referring to Trump by saying, there's a person many years later. Um, can you believe something along the lines? Can you believe we've elected a really dumb person, a really fucking dumb person? 500 years later. And I wanted to know, like, you know, does it satisfy you to say things like that about Trump? So two things: describe the drawing in your own eyes, why you made it, what it says, and then yeah, you're choosing to
Um,
say something like that.
so I do I, like again, I know we'll probably continue because my vantage point is always going to be personal, like, but on a personal level, I do find like something interesting is to sort of imagine, you know, what people, whether it's during the revolution times or whatever period of time, given a glimpse of what's happening now or given a glimpse of who Trump is, what would be sort of
Perspective.
what would their perspective be? What would they say? But then, like, sort of, but they wouldn't, but then how would they say it if they were not living in the 1700s, but living now? What vernacular would they use? That's again, sort of a personal, I just find it sort of fun to think of it that way. I do enjoy, it's like a pressure valve. Like I do enjoy saying this stuff about him too. And it was really, I mean, I just used a painting as the point of reference and just tried to copy it, as completely as I could. Um, and I think sometimes I do get some flack for drawings like this where I'll use the founding fathers or whatever dumb vernacular there. But people say, well, they're not they weren't exactly angels either, and they owned other human beings and uh, all that stuff, all of which is completely true. But it's also sort of not the point. I'm not trying to lionize. I'm
Right.
not saying like these people are so much better. It's more just it's sort of trying to dislodge, for me, like dislodge myself from the vantage point of right now. Like, okay, what if we were looking at right now, but it was removed from context, and you're just seeing what's happening on its face from a very, from a different place, what would that look like?
But it's
And
also it's really giving a mirror. It's like this is our country. These were our founding documents that represented very specific values that are supposed to be considered almost like the crux of American values: life, liberty, etc., freedom of speech, etc. And so when you're showing something like, can you believe that we're now having to deal with this incredibly dumb person? You're basically saying this is where we started out and here's where we are now. You're actually just referring to a shared sense of how profoundly we care about the values of our founding country, right?
sure, yeah, 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 and that's right. It is sort of holding on to, if you're going to believe the American myth, if you're going to believe that enterprise, and then that's really more sort of throwing it that part of it's really throwing it back onto like the MAGA base, who which I know is under I understand it's mostly just lip service, it's not real, but there is sort of this this idolatry the American experience. Like, okay, well, if that's true, and again, goes back to the pointlessness of trying to point out the hypocrisy. It doesn't matter. There is no real true ideology there. So